Good morning. Welcome to the December 6th meeting of the Mason County Board of County Commissioners. Thank you all for being here. I would like to ask Mr. Jim Reese to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Can we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner District 1, Randy Netherland.
I'm here.
Commissioner District 2, Tim Sheldon.
I'm here as well.
And Commissioner District 3, Terry Jeffries.
Here. Correspondence and organizational business. Can you please report the correspondence received by the Commission?
2017 levy and budget reports were sent in from the following: Mason County Fire District Number 6, Educational Service District 113, Mason County Fire District 3, 5, North Mason Fire District 17, and the City of Shelton. Ken Van Buskirk sent a letter regarding the Capital Facilities Plan. State of Washington Department of Ecology sent notification they issued a Group 3 wastewater treatment plant operator certificate for Marty Grable. The Mason County Auditor sent a letter that the 10 signatures on Barry Fisher's application for the Noxious Weed Control Board have been verified as registered voters. Bill Dewey sent a letter for his resignation from the Mason County Planning Advisory Commission. Ken Van Buskirk commented on the Old Belfair Highway Sewer Collection System State Environmental Policy Act, the SEPA. And comments were received on the Shoreline Master Program from Philip Planter, Rick Mraz, John Egbert, and Jim Reese.
Thank you. Barbara Adkins, news release, Planning Advisory Commission vacancy staff. Or Dave Wyndham, our Director
Or
of
the lovely
Community
Dave Wyndham.
Sorry, she's got you beat.
Boy, you have a high thought of yourself, don't you?
The school closure this morning kind of put things on a different trajectory. So we have a public news release. Mason County is seeking applicants from Commissioner District 3 for the Mason County Planning Advisory Commission. The Planning Advisory Commission is a 7-member citizen board appointed to advise the Board of Commissioners on policy related to amendments to the Comprehensive Plan, Shoreline Master Plan, and land use regulations. The Commission typically meets once a month on the third Monday at 6 p.m. with special meetings scheduled as necessary. Appointed commissioners normally serve a 4-year term. The term for this position will expire in December 30, 2020. Applications to serve on the board are being accepted until the position is filled and should be submitted to the Mason County Commissioners, 411 North 5th, Shelton, Washington, 98584. Application forms may be obtained from the Commissioner's Office, 427-9670, extension 419, or visit the website at Mason County, masoncountywad.us.
Dave, do we also have an opening for District 2?
Yes, we have two openings.
Should this news release be amended to include both openings?
We could. We have done the public announcement of the other position as well, but there are 2 positions open.
I'm thinking since we are going back out to the public, we should probably just be comprehensive. Commissioners, do you have any?
No, let's do that.
Okay, can do.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Matter of fact, we have somebody in the audience that was on there that we need to retap again. Jim Reese, yeah.
The most important commission or advisory board, in my opinion, of Mason County, because it is actually legislatively mandated.
I had the honor to serve with Jim on the planning.
The next item, is there any more organizational business? Clerk, Madam Clerk? No, thank you. The next item is our open forum for citizen input. This is an opportunity to address the commission and the public. We are being videotaped on any items that are not on the agenda. If you do have an item you'd like to testify that's on the agenda, please wait until that item comes up. Is there anybody that would like to address the commission? Please raise your hand. You'll be recognized. Okay, well, thank you. We'll move on to the adoption of the agenda.
Madam Chair, I move for the adoption of the agenda as presented.
Madam Chair, I'll second the motion to adopt the agenda.
I do need to share that we do need to amend the agenda.
What do we have?
We have a public hearing scheduled at 10.1. The public hearing that was continued from November 22nd to certify to the county assessor the amount of taxes levied
That's right.
for county purposes and the amount of taxes levied for each taxing district for 2017, and the road property tax levy for 2017, which will also be recertified. We do this certification once we received all the special purpose district levies, and the county commission needs to recertify the road levy because we did a shift of some funds to our current expense.
The question I have of that, where is Frank? Question I have of that is, we've actually announced this, so, as a hearing, so wouldn't we need to go into session on it and then, yeah, so,
Okay,
yeah,
okay, thank you for that.
yeah. Yes, other than that, we have to go out again for 2 weeks and,
Okay, my apologies, thank you for that clarification on procedure. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda as presented. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, motion carried. Approval of the minutes.
Madam Chair, the Board of County Commissioners has 2 sets of briefing minutes to approve, and I will move their approval October 31st and November 7th of this year.
I will second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the October 31st and November 7th briefing meeting minutes as presented. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, motion carried, thank you. Next, we move on to our action agenda. The intention is that these items would be approved in one motion. We will read through all 18 items and provide an opportunity after reading for the audience to ask any questions on any of the items on the agenda. The audience and the commission also have the alternative or the option to ask that any of the items be removed for a separate vote and for testimony from the public. So I'm going to ask Commissioner Sheldon to read item 8.1 through 8.6, Commissioner Netherland 8.7 through 8.12, and I will read 8.13 through 8.18.
Okay, Madam Chair, is 817 already stricken?
It is.
Okay.
Madam Chair, 8.1 starts, approval to renew the contract with MasonWebTV.com for live streaming services of regular commission meetings and Board of Health meetings for 2017, with an option to renew for an additional 2 years. The rate per meeting is $50 for up to 4 hours. The rate for each additional hour is $25. 8.2, approval to reappoint Stephen Rose and appoint David Willard to new 3-year terms of office on the Mason County Historic Commission. The terms end November 2019. 8.3, approval of agreement number IAC 17396 for 2017 Public Defense Improvement Funds. The awarded grant is $77,493. 8.4, approval to appoint Barry Fisher to the Noxious Weed Control Board. The term ends December 6, 2020. 8.5, approval to set a public hearing on December 20, 2016 at 9:30 a.m. to consider an ordinance repealing the moratorium on medical cannabis cooperatives and reducing the permitted distance from cooperatives under RCW 69.50.331, parenthesis 8, parenthesis B. And 8.6, approval to set a public hearing on December 20, 2016 at 9:30 a.m. to consider the annual updates of the 2017 through 2022 Capital Facilities Chapter of the Mason County Comprehensive Plan.
Madam Chair, item number 8.7 reads approval of warrants. Claims Clearing Fund, warrants number 8044338 through 8044661 for $962,347.14. Claims, Direct Deposit Fund, warrants number 36336 through 3632 for $678,685.46. Salary Clearing Fund, warrants number 7002361 through 7002388 for $486,683.45. Total, $2,127,716.05. Claims clearing year-to-date total is $29,334,370.29. Direct deposit year-to-date total, $12,828,753.76. And the salary clearing fund year-to-date total is $13,501,283.09. Item number 8.8, approval of the Veterans Assistance Fund applications, necessity items, $709.22. Utilities is $1,014.79, and housing is $1,558 for a total of $3,282.01. Item number 8.9, approval to authorize Public Works Equipment Rental and Revolving ER&R to advertise set bid opening award signed contract if needed and allow the chair to sign all pertinent documents for the call for bids to furnish Mason County with culvert pipe and lining. Contract awards will be announced at a scheduled meeting of the Board of Mason County Commissioners. Item number 8.10, approval to execute the interlocal agreement with the City of Shelton, allowing the county to deliver sludge produced by the county wastewater treatment facilities to the City of Shelton's wastewater treatment plant for further treatment. Item number 8.11, approval of a resolution renaming Fund 205 .000.000.000.000 Mason County Public Works Facility Bond 07 to Mason County Public Works Facility Bond Fund. This fund is set up to receive resources and to pay the costs of the State of Washington's Certificates of Participation, Series 2016A, Public Works Facility Lease Number 0144-2-1. Item number 8.12, approval to authorize Public Works, Utilities, and Wastewater, UNW, Management Division to advertise a request for proposal for the hauling of biosolids between the county-owned and operated wastewater treatment facilities. I should say between the facilities and the City of Shelton, I think, or wherever we're going to do it.
Okay. Item 8.13, approval to authorize the chair to execute amendment number 2 for the agreement with MDG Wastewater and Water Treatment for an additional $15,000 to continue water and wastewater management services and include PERS retirement payment contributions to Washington State Department of Retirement Systems. 8.14, approval of the resolution authorizing the county road load speed restrictions and emergency closing orders for the 2017 calendar year. 8.15, approval to terminate the Sand Hill County Park Attendant Contractual Employment Agreement executed on May 10, 2016 between Mason County, Bo White, and Amber Beach, and to approve the Release and Hold Harmless Agreement to release and forever discharge Mason County and its officers, agents, employees, agencies, and departments from any and all existing and future claims, damages, and causes of action of any nature whatsoever arising out of the termination of the contractual agreement dated November 30, 2016, and to pay the sum of $5,000 as agreed. 8.16, approval to enter into a 60-month copier lease with RICO for the Public Defense Office in the amount of $89.15 per month for a MP2554SP copy, scan, fax, and authorize the chair to sign the contract. Item 8.17 has been removed. 8.18, approval to set a public hearing on December 20, 2016 at 9:30 a.m. to consider the rezone of parcel 12329-13-90091 from low-density residential R4 to rural residential 5 RR5. There are a lot of items on this agenda. Does anybody have any questions on any of the items just read? Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Conley Watson. I live at 140 East Fox Lane in Hartstein. My question is on 8.12. Didn't I read in the paper that at one time AAA was to haul the biofuels from Belfair to Webb Hill? I think that was an old contract. I remember reading it in the paper, in the journal.
Please.
Recently there was a contract between Flowhawks and Mason County that was delivering to Webb Hill. We are no longer delivering to Webb Hill. We are now going to the City of Shelton.
Yes.
But we also that contract has expired, so we're going out for a new bid.
Thank you. Just clarify it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on any of the items on today's action agenda?
Madam Chair, just that item that Connolly brought that up about, I don't know that we've got this worded correctly. It says, it would give the public the impression that we're contracting to haul these biosolids just to the, back and forth to the 3 sites, so
Let's step in there.
I think it needs clarification.
I know when I read it, I did add
Yes.
the facility, so
Um,
if it's put through, we should probably add that as an amendment.
Let's remove that one for,
Okay.
and we can have somebody
Okay,
speak
thank you.
about it and clarify it, just so.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Would anybody in the audience like any of these items removed for a separate vote and testimony? Commissioners?
On 8.15, after reading that again for a couple times, I think it might be worth a little explanation of why we're entering into this agreement.
Would you like that pulled for a separate vote, or would you like to
No.
have that presentation
Just
now?
maybe just a quick, is Jeff here?
Are you able to speak to this?
Could you do that, Frank? I think it'd be nice just to understand it, so.
So let's do that now, then. Go ahead and explain the action of item 8.15.
So the circumstances at Sand Hill Park is that we have a building there that is being occupied by the park attendant. That building has fallen into disrepair and is a safety hazard. So we are entering into a contract with the park attendant, or canceling the contract with the park attendant and removing the building that he was using as a part of that contract. So the facility will, at this point in time, not have a building, but we will renegotiate a new contract with a new park attendant at some time in the future.
And the $5,000 sum is to help him relocate?
Is to help him relocate and for offset the costs of relocating himself, his partner, and some family members.
Questions?
No.
Thank you.
Just one.
Sure.
Appreciate that.
And just one more, if no one else has a question. On 8.3, maybe we'll clarify that too. The public employment retirement system on 8.13 is for individuals, but we are making an agreement with, sounds like a company, MDG Wastewater. That is Marty Grable. It's an individual.
But it's also his company, though.
Yes, but I didn't want the public to think that we were,
And
we can't, a company can't get into the retirement system. It has to be a person.
so I would like to ask, actually, Don Twitty, our Human Resources Manager, to explain why the PERS is being paid.
Actually, Frank Pincher knows.
Okay.
So the Public Works Department has contracted with MDG Wastewater and Waste Treatment. It is a professional service organization who has hired, or is Marty Grable, an individual who had been an employee for the county previously. And as such, a county employee who retires and comes back to work for the county as a subcontractor, as a professional services, the county is still required to pay for their PERS through the Department of Retirement Systems. So that is what we're adding to his contract, is for that component, which is the retirement service dollars.
And purposes, the reason for having a contract with MDG Wastewater Water Treatment is that we are not having much luck finding qualified operators for our wastewater system. We are required to have a level 3 certified operator, and we have been out probably a year now looking for qualified personnel. We get a lot of folks in training, but we are required by law, and we do need the expertise of somebody who has experience. And so we're at this point forced to
Contract.
those services. Okay. If there are no other questions or requests to remove any items, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I would move that the Board of County Commissioners approve all the items on today's action agenda with the exception of item 8.12 to approve or disapprove separately.
And 8.17, which was removed.
And yes, thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve all the items on today's action agenda with the exception of item 8.12 and item 8.17. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, motion carried. Item 8.12, approval to authorize Public Works, Utilities, and Wastewater, UNW, Management Division to advertise a request for proposal for the hauling of biosolids between the county-owned and operated wastewater treatment facilities. Presentation or?
Or could you suggest a word change there that would clarify it for the department?
Madam Chair, Bart Stepp with Public Works. Yeah, I think in terms of the recommended action, I think if we just added to the city of Shelton at the end of that sentence, a little clarification, because yeah, that's what's going on is our biosolids will now be going to the city of Shelton, whereas previously they were going to Webb Hill.
So,
Madam Chair, could I then restate that motion? for
Okay.
that one?
please do.
Okay, Madam Chair, I move that 8.12 be altered to read approval to allow, to authorize Public Works, Utilities, and Wastewater, UNW, Management Division to advertise a request for proposals for the hauling of biosolids between the county-owned and operated wastewater treatment facilities and the city of Shelton for disposal.
Is that altered and approved as such, Commissioner? Or just altered, the motion?
No,
I just would substitute that motion.
he's making a
Okay.
motion.
I'll second.
I'm just thinking we probably need to open it for public comment. So it's been moved and seconded to approve and authorize Public Works, Utilities, and Wastewater, UNW Management Division to advertise a request for proposals for the hauling of biosolids between the county-owned and operated wastewater treatment facilities and the city of Shelton. Is there anybody who would like to testify on this?
For
issue?
disposal.
For disposal. Sorry. Anybody that would like to testify? Commissioners, is there any discussion?
There's plenty of jokes I could make, but
I'll call for the
I
vote.
won't.
All in favor?
Just thinking of all of them in my head.
No, we're curious.
Okay.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, motion carried. Thank you. The next item is item number 9, other business, department heads and elected officials. We have an item 9.1, which is the selection of a Mason County clerk. I would like to ask the commission, I've been asked whether or not we will take public comment on this topic, on this issue. Is there any preferences one way or the other?
Well, maybe you, as the chair, maybe you just want to review our
I will.
our situation here, and
I'd be happy
I
to.
wouldn't mind if we asked for, if anyone wanted to make a statement or not.
Okay.
But,
Commissioner Netherland, do you have any issues? Okay. It was announced, I believe in October, that our longtime employee and county clerk of the courts, Ginger Brooks, is retiring. And by state law, we asked for and received nominations from the Mason County Democratic Party to appoint a replacement for her until an election can be held next November. So we did receive 3 names and the applications, and they're drawing out their qualifications of 3 individuals for appointment, consideration of appointment to the Mason County Clerk's office, or to be the clerk. So we are going to appoint, as stated by law, one of the individuals, and I would like and I don't have all 3 names in front of me, I apologize, Sharon Fogo, Kathy Gallagher, and Marilana O'Donnell. I'd like to go ahead and open up the floor. Is there any other discussion the commission wants to give? I'd like to open up the floor for anybody who would like to make any comments on any of the three candidates. Mr. Gallagher.
Hi, I am Chase Gallagher. Kathy Gallagher couldn't be here today. She's on a previously scheduled out-of-town vacation, so I have a brief letter from her that I'd like to read. Good morning. Due to scheduling changes, I'm not able to be with you today as you appoint the next county clerk, but I wanted to share a little bit about myself and why I'm uniquely qualified to carry forward the work that Ginger Brooks has done throughout her term. I've worked with Ginger at the clerk's office for the past 17 years, and I've learned a lot from her and her predecessor, Pat Swartos, about how to serve Mason County in our efficient and fair court system. And it's because of my proven experience in the clerk's office, my dedication to ensuring everyone that comes into our judicial system is treated fairly and with respect, and passion for our community that I seek the appointment of Mason County Clerk. My 17 years as a deputy clerk has been the longest and most fulfilling job I've had, aside from raising our two kids. I started my career in public service in 1973 as a state employee with the Employment Security Department, and then at the Utilities and Transportation Commission, where I received an award from the governor for finding efficiencies to protect taxpayer resources. After leaving state service to raise our son and daughter, I worked at two small businesses working on real estate legal records before joining the clerk's office 17 years ago. In that time, I've received promotions and worked to improve the service we provide the residents of Mason County. I'm an office leader on our new computer system that will enable our office to serve customers even better with quicker responses and more efficient use of staff time. The clerk's office staff are dedicated public servants that work so hard to make sure that everyone who comes into the courthouse is treated fairly. Clerks are, of course, in the courtroom during proceedings, providing the official legal record for cases both big and small, but we also process all variety of legal filings, help people get passports, and manage protection orders for victims of domestic violence. We're a small office, but we haven't been able to keep up with the demands of our Superior Court, where we've added another judge position in recent years. Our office space originally had 3 employees in it, but now has a cramped 12 employees in the same space. I want to work with you, the commissioners, to make sure that we have the capacity to serve our growing county and invest in modernization, like being able to finally accept credit card payments in the office. While you have other qualified nominees before you, I believe that my experience, dedication, and service to our community make me uniquely suited for this appointment. I look forward to working with you as we ensure that everyone in Mason County has the fair, equal, and just service from the clerk's office. Thank you, Kathy Gallagher.
Thanks very much. Is there anybody else that would like to make comment on the question before the commission? Thank you. Commissioners, we've had, just wanted to share with the public, we had a closed session meeting to discuss the qualifications of all the applicants, and so we've reviewed them individually and as a group.
And, thank you, Madam Chair. We have, I think, 2 very qualified candidates of the 3. And we also received some letters from, of recommendation from former Judge Sawyer and from Jerry Bird, who worked in the Superior Court for many, many years and is now retired. Both of those individuals are retired. And I want to thank Chase for coming in today. Chase worked for me in the legislature a while ago. Kids grew up together, and he now works for the governor's office and doing a great job over there. So thanks for being here today, Chase, for your mom.
Commissioner?
As was explained, we had an executive session. We went over the qualifications. We also were blessed to have the current clerk in to discuss some of these issues with us as well. And I found them all to be very qualified. Very happy with the selections that were sent to us by the Democratic Party.
Madam Chair, just one more item. We might explain to the public that you mentioned the process, but because the person that had the position had declared on the ballot that they were a preferred, the Democratic Party, the commissioners have no choice but have to consider the 3 names delivered to us by the Democratic Central Committee. And the person that is appointed would serve for this year and then run for office, I think, in
November of 2017.
November of 2017. I see the auditor,
If they chose to.
if they choose
If
to,
they
sure.
choose to, yes.
So I see you're agreeing with that. So November 17th would be a special
1 year unexpired.
one-year unexpired term, and then if that person wins the election, I think they take office when it's officially, again, when it was certified, if it's the incumbent, so.
And I just want to share that we have the good fortune in the clerk of the court's office to have very experienced people. They've been there for, almost all the staff have been there for a very, very long time. And so we are very fortunate to have experienced candidates to select from. This is unique and makes this difficult while reassuring that whoever is chosen will do a phenomenal job. Especially as we move into a new computer system, which is why Clerk Brooks felt this was the time to step away while we were implementing a new computer system. She felt like we needed to have somebody that, as people shake their heads going, oh my gosh, this thing's killing
But
us.
not because she couldn't handle it, she just thought that it would be wise to have somebody in place that would be able to continue forward with it.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay. So given all our considerations, is there a motion to consider?
Madam Chair, I move to select Sharon Fogo to serve as the Mason County Clerk until certification of the 2017 general election.
I will second that motion. It's been moved and seconded to select Sharon Fogo to serve as the Mason County Clerk until certification of the 2017 general election. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair, I know both candidates. I think they're both excellent candidates. I think Sharon has served as our chief deputy there at times for a while, and the two recommendations that we received from retired Judge Sawyer and Jerry Burt, our longtime employee in the Superior Court office, were both very laudatory of Sharon and her abilities. So I'm happy to support her in this appointment.
Like I say, they were all qualified. I was very happy, as I said earlier, with our selections, what they set forward. Any one of them, I think, would have done a wonderful job in this position. I'm very happy to move forward with any selection we put.
And I agree. I seconded this motion primarily due to the outstanding recommendations of former Judge Sawyer. Both of them are amazingly qualified, and like I said, this is a very difficult decision, and we're very, very blessed to be able to have some great candidates, and unfortunately, you can only choose one. So I'm going to go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Congratulations, Sharon. Would you like to address the...
Yeah, you're.
Now you're public figure.
First of all, Sharon, I'm sorry.
We'll try to get you a bigger space.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me and for selecting me. I'm honored. I'm truly, deeply honored. And I'm looking forward to the challenges, and I'm a little scared, but I think that's to be expected, so.
Uh-oh, that means you're smart.
Well, I hope I can share that with the community and I am looking forward to helping serve my community even more than I do now. I was asked one time what my hobbies were. Pretty much volunteering is my hobby, because I'm on 2 different PTSO boards. I'm involved in my church, and I love this community, and I was born at Mason General Hospital and grew up here, so I look forward to serving this area some more. So thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for stepping up.
Yeah, congratulations.
Now is also an opportunity for our elected officials and department heads to address the community, and we do have one elected official. Our sheriff was here. I don't know if he's still in the foyer. But is there any elected officials or department heads who would like to address the commission and the community? And then we will move on to item 10, which is our public hearing. Our first public hearing, 10.1, is a public hearing to continued from November 22nd to certify to the county assessor the amount of taxes levied for county purposes and the amount of taxes levied for each taxing district for 2017. The road property tax levy for 2017 will also be recertified.
Madam Chair, there are several entities that have not put in their amount for certification, so I would like to make a motion early and just ask that it be tabled until, which date would you prefer, Frank?
A week from today, December 13th.
That we table this discussion in this hearing to December 13th.
I'll second the motion, Madam Chair, to table this until December 13th.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to table the discussion and continue this hearing to December 13th. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Right?
Aye.
Aye, motion carried. Item 10.2, this is a hearing that is continued from October 25th, 2016, and this is a public hearing to consider a resolution to repeal and replace the Mason County Shoreline Master Program.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Kel McAvoy with the Mason County Planning Department. As you know, I'm just stepping in this morning. Rebecca Hersha was our staff who worked on this master program update for the last several years. And Rick Mraz and Tim Gates are both here from the Department of Ecology, and they have been very instrumental in assisting us in updating the master program. And Barbara Adkins could also not be here this morning due to some school late openings this morning. So I'm just hosting this little event and would like to introduce some other folks that will assist with some questions. I am very familiar with the county's current Shoreline Master Program and just familiarizing myself with the updates. So also here to help. So,
Madam Chair, Kel worked for us before and went away for a while, and now is back, and you can tell how skilled she is with that clause, the verb, she's hosting this.
Thank you. I'm asking, I guess we need to ask, there were some recommended changes, and we've received a tremendous amount of public comment, written comment with some recommended revisions as well. I do want to ask if you could explain what is being recommended for changes to the shoreline designation maps.
I can for the west side of Cushman, and then the other changes I'd like to ask Tim Gates to address those.
Okay.
So my understanding is that the designation for, well, first of all, our current Shoreline Master Program has 4 environmental designations, and that's urban, urban, rural, conservancy, and natural. And now we have 6 designations. And that goes from, let me use my cheat sheet because I don't have them memorized. But our 6 new designations are commercial, residential, rural, conservancy, natural, and aquatic. And so the west side of Lake Cushman is currently designated as rural. The new designation, I guess, was changed to... The draft designation was designated as conservancy. We have changed that back to a rural designation. What that means as far as development goes is that piers and docks would be treated the same as the east side of Lake Cushman. The dollar valuations for when things go from a shoreline exemption to a substantial development permit, which puts you into a public hearing, those are the same for both the east side and the west side. And the residential designation on the east side and the rural designation on the west side are very similar. And so that's that change. The others Tim can address.
Okay. Tim, would we like to hear about those map changes that Mr. Gates will address?
I think so. I'm sure that some people will testify about it. Maybe it'd be good to hear from Tim first.
Mr. Gates,
Yeah, good morning, Commissioners. So
can you introduce yourself? for
Oh,
the
I'm sorry,
record?
Tim Gates for the record. I'm with the Department of Ecology.
Thank you.
So the proposal is to basically change the designation to retain the existing route. So that's a little confusing, but I think the public comments were spot on. When we looked at it closely, the area was characterized in a way that really met the rural criteria. So good catch. This is something that we've done all along through the Planning Commission. People would come in and find errors with the designation maps. And just what it requires is just go look at all the facts. We had another comment from the Skokomish tribe, and they had about 5 areas that they thought were designated incorrectly. All of those except for one, after a close examination, we thought that the proposal was correct. The criteria in your master program were consistent. There was one area, and it was described as north of Wikitiki Creek, 2 miles of shoreline that has very little development, 101 on steep bluffs. So Ecology prepared an analysis of this, and it might be in your packets. It should be anyway. I'm not sure if Barbie got that to you. But this entire reach is zoned rural tourist, except for a little bit on rural residential. It's currently conservancy. So what we're suggesting is that you retain the current conservancy designation. It was accidentally changed to residential. So I think it was another good catch, basically that the existing master program should be retained instead of changed.
And what area was that? Sorry.
So it's north of Wikitiki, basically the Girl Scouts.
Okay.
Is all the owner, Tim, Madam Chair, if I could ask that question.
Please.
Tim, is it all within the Girl Scouts ownership, former Robbins family ownership?
That is my understanding, yeah. We confirm that, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anything else that you wanted to out? We did receive some comment late in the day yesterday, so I'm feeling a little bit discombobulated because we didn't have a chance to actually sit down and be briefed on some of these changes. So is there anything else you wanted to share?
Well, there was a couple of other comments, and I don't know how you want to address this. I realize it's tough without staff. Rebecca Hersha was running this program for the last few years and left after your last hearing. So I feel a little bit like I'm not supposed to be a Mason County staff person, even though sometimes I feel like I am when I come to all your meetings.
I appreciate
You are today.
But
I'd be happy to help.
Say, let's not be confused. You are. That's it.
I'd be happy to help organize a discussion around it if you like, because Ecology did look at it. And this is a little bit of an unusual thing because this is a shared document. Ecology approves it. If it's challenged, Ecology defends it. We help implement it. So there is kind of a collaborative and cooperative program here. And so I feel comfortable addressing the issues that are raised if you're good with that.
Okay. I'm going to probably take you up on that or recommend it the commission.
But there is still, the two organizations can disagree, as you know, so we have to be careful with that.
Absolutely.
That the roles aren't melded into one.
Right. Well, so do you want me to take a stab at this? There was a comment letter from Taylor Shellfish, and I thought that one might be a definable chunk you could grab onto. And there was comments about docks, and there was another set of comments that we could talk about. I don't know what your how you'd like to do this.
Yeah.
What kind of exactly what attachments you got even?
Okay. We did get Taylor Shellfish's comments, along with comments from other folks interested in the dormant shellfish question.
Right.
And so perhaps you can explain to us and the public, what is that issue here?
Yeah, I could take a stab at that. Those are the same issue. So the issue is about existing and ongoing aquaculture operations. So the way that the existing master program was written is addressed, and maybe I could direct your attention to the comment letter from Taylor Shellfish, because it includes the citation. It's in proposed Mason County Code 17.50, 210B, 1D. This is an area that addresses the status of existing aquaculture activities. So the way it's written in the proposal is it says existing aquaculture activities includes areas that are actively cultivated and or dormant. And then it fleshes that out. It's like, what does that mean exactly? What does it mean to be dormant? It says dormant, it said dormant areas include property that was acquired under the Bush or Callow Acts of 1895. Areas undergoing crop rotation, areas dormant due to market conditions, seed or juvenile availability, past and current pest infections, water quality issues, and other cultivation factors beyond the control of the operator. So it basically laid out, under these circumstances, if you've been farming for some reason out of your control, essentially, you can't farm anymore, you don't get penalized for it, and when you try to restart your operation, you have that existing right. It's guaranteed. You can continue to farm areas. One of those criteria, if you look at them, that is not like the other, is when you acquired it. All the other ones are because of some other condition, like market conditions, or you can't get seed, or if there's a water quality issue. So the comment was basically, hey, wait a minute, what if you acquired the land 100 years ago and you haven't used it? Is it really existing? So it was kind of pushing on that question. Does this belong in that list of other things that should be considered existing aquaculture? Do you have any questions about the problem statement?
I don't.
So that was the question. And it's a legitimate question, and it
Well,
was...
I do have a question.
Oh, sorry.
There's reference to some Supreme Court decisions on this, or the Bush-Callow Act. Maybe it wasn't a Supreme Court decision.
Yeah.
Was that so? So what was discussed in that act that we're applying here?
Well, I think when you look at what the Taylor proposal to address it, it doesn't really matter. I don't even know exactly. I didn't
Okay.
read all the questions. It seemed like there was a bunch of comments basically around that question of you shouldn't get presumptively considered existing just because you're a bush of lands.
Okay.
If you look at what the Taylor Shellfish letter suggests is it clarifies that it's presumed that that area is existing, but it adds that a presumptively dormant area may, case by case, be deemed abandoned, provided clear and affirmative information evidencing intent to abandon the area for shellfish farming is provided. So what it did was it provided basically an out or a acknowledgement that there are some areas that might not actually be dormant. They might have just been abandoned, and they might have gone completely back to nature, and they might have nothing to do with shellfish farming anymore. So it does add an acknowledgement. Now it's written in such a way that it still retains the presumption. So it's definitely it's weighted in favor of them being considered existing and ongoing, but it does allow for exceptions case by case.
Gotcha. On the statement that you had read, acquired through the Bush-Callow Act, is there a comma after that? Or is it inclusive of the next part?
Yeah, it's a semicolon. So it's all the following. And they actually suggest taking out callow, and I printed up copies of where these lands are. It's from DNR's website. You can find it readily. And I can see why, because there are no Callow Act lands in Mason County, so that's not the relevant
Okay. Well,
citation.
because we're using that for the definition of what is, the question becomes, I can understand if it's been, fallow, if we're left to be so it can regenerate naturally or whatever, if it's considered to be still existing. But just because it was, acquired wouldn't seem to make much sense to me, so.
Well, there's different ways to address this. What you have is a proposal from Taylor to keep it in there as it's presumed to be dormant or actively cultivated, but it gives you the out. So there's other ways you can address this. Some master programs are actually silent on this, and they end up having to deal with it case by case. Mason County chose to try to address this specifically because the issue comes up. The issue does come up. This is a legit thing. And, you know, the concern is good. I think you've got an option before you that would allow you to acknowledge cases where shellfish farming isn't being done. Now, I will say that one reason it is important to account for existing, dormancy and retaining the rights to have existing farms is it can be a very good practice for the environment to back off and to take out of production. Actually, it's not a bad thing.
That's what I meant.
Right, so I think, having this kind of clarity can be beneficial. If you don't address it in the master program, it's going to come up. So I think it is worth addressing.
Madam Chair, I think it is worth addressing it. It's kind of an esoteric point with a lot of people, but I mean, if you're in Kittitas County, who cares? Because you don't have any shellfish, but we certainly do, and the markets can change. There's a lot of things that can happen over the years, so I think it's good to include it.
Well, science can change. What's
Yeah.
best today could be a little bit different. We want to be able to keep those lands active as long as possible.
Right.
That's the backbone of, we don't have as much timber as we used to.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Gates? Thank you so much.
There were two other comments that the Taylors included as recommendations to clarify as well. I don't know if you wanted to address those today, but those are also in the
If
same.
you don't mind, I'd like to hear.
Please.
I don't have that.
And these I think also were good catches. I think Ecology thought that proposal was a good clarification. I thought it did address a legitimate comment from the public. On these other two, if you turn the page, on page 2, addressing Mason County Code 17.50, 210B1E. The existing code said, consistent with mitigation sequencing, aquaculture use and development shall not materially interfere with surface waters. Mitigation may be required where necessary to offset material significant adverse impacts to normal public use of the water. So the comment was basically like, wait a minute, you start off with a prohibition and then you say, oh, but you can do it as long as you mitigate. So what this proposal does is basically just clear that up. It just takes out that first absolute prohibition and then says you may have to do mitigation to offset any impacts that you do have. And I would say this is very consistent with the Act. If you look at the Shoreline Management Act, there is no ban on material on it interfering with normal surface use of the water. It's just a trigger to get a permit, if you look at the statute. So Ecology was fine with that provision if you wanted to amend the master program to include that. The other one, on page 3, amending Mason County Code 17.50, 210B1I. The request was to strike that first sentence under sub 2, which it says, as required by, and then it points to 852-170, all activities in saltwater shall avoid impacts to eelgrass and kelp beds. And this was another good catch because that provision does not exist. It moved, it's in a different place, and it's basically redundant. That the place where it does exist applies whether or not this was in here.
Yeah.
Okay. Appreciate that catch. Okay, any other issues you want him to?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Barbara Adkins has joined us. There she is. Barbara, appreciate the fact how difficult it is to be a working mother.
Thank you.
So we've had a short introduction. We talked about the designations changes.
And I brought a bigger map in
Okay.
case anybody wanted to see closer up where those areas.
And for the public's purposes, shall we put this map up? Take the time to put this up if somebody can help
This is,
her. Okay. So, yeah, why don't you point out what we've been talking about? We talked about both the Skokomish tribe request to change down on the
Down
lower end
here?
of the canal. If you could point that area out. And then we spoke to the Lake Cushman west side areas.
Sorry, Rick Mraz, Department of Ecology,
Yes.
here to be Vanna White. The Lake Cushman, or the Girl Scout property is up along the west shore.
I thought so.
of the canal. And then that's the whole west shore of Lake Cushman is now.
It's up higher
rural.
there?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
But it's on the Highway 101 side, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the Wiki Creek Conservation Area, and that's the Girl Scouts, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Okay, so we just discussed some requested or recommended changes to the aquaculture piece as it relates to dormant shellfish beds and the other two topics. I wanted to ask you, we did receive comment, and I've got the language here, but I don't recall where it came from, and some recommended changes to the section 120, 17-50-120, around existing structures. I'm trying to find that very quickly. That
Like the Steve Whitehouse comments? Is that what you, the legal non-conforming?
yes,
Okay,
yes.
that was that revised language.
Okay, I guess I wanted staff's opinion on whether these changes provide clarification enough to address the question of, or explain, if you can explain the issue, and just I'd like your recommendation around the proposed changes.
Well, the revisions were made by Rick. I'll let, if you want to
Okay.
address your, well, I can't tell you
You
that.
can let him use the.
I'd be happy to give this to you here. It's just some language. And this was, I think, included discussion with our deputy prosecuting attorney, did it not?
It did. Again, for the record, Rick Mraz, Washington Department of Ecology, Wetlands and Shoreline Specialist. And these were in response to questions raised by Stephen Whitehouse on language that addressed existing structures and existing uses. I think Mr. Whitehouse's comments primarily focused on this concern over the lack of a qualifying term for those existing structures. There are certain structures that are not considered grandfathered. Those things are development, residential development over the water, so houses out over the water, or in floodways, so in the mapped FEMA floodway. The Shoreline Management Act speaks of those as structures that can be repaired and maintained in perpetuity, but should not be considered conforming with the master program. So they're, by default, non-conforming structures, but Mr. Whitehouse wanted a clarifying statement that they're legal non-conforming. And this is an important statement. I think it's a good addition to make it clear to any property owner who has ownership in one of those developments that they have that status, they can rebuild, they're not an illegal structure. There are certain things about not being able to rebuild structures that weren't permitted or were predated regulations, and this just adds that standing. So I think that was the intent in the language initially, but it wasn't specific enough, so each of these additions are simply to say that they also, as well as being non-conforming, they're legal non-conforming.
Just so you know, the difference between the two is being able to have it funded or not have it funded.
For bank purchases and
for
such.
bank financing,
That has
yeah.
come up, yeah.
So it is a very important word.
So it seemed like a simple fix, and we haven't heard any objection to it at this point.
So that fixes in the new document.
I understand that. In the new document, you're saying?
Yes, the new document will add legal to the non-conforming, and under 1A, structure shall be considered legal non-conforming. Under 1B, lawfully constructed structures, including legal non-conforming structures, may continue and may be repaired, replaced, and maintained within their footprints in accordance with the act and this program and other applicable regulations.
I think we may have to read each one into it at the end.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
It's not in what we're having a public hearing on. These changes are
Yeah.
not
they're-
in the document, the draft that we're
Right.
having a hearing
So
on.
we'll just.
So it's not in here.
We'll read them, perhaps read them and then ask if any wants to be separated out. And then, what do you think?
There's a couple things that I want to consider with the commission, but I want to take this gentleman's question. Is this a question or testimony?
I wanted to object to
Okay,
Mr.
we'll-
Whitehouse.
We'll wait till we get to the public testimony period. Right now is questions.
Make another statement.
Well, no, the statement is, there's an opportunity for a statement. If you have a question, you ask a
Okay,
question.
as far as the language, he talks about grandfather.
for old docks. That's my consideration is I guess the non-conformance, what that means in the original footprint. I have a meeting with Mr. Wyndham on Friday about this. My name's Mike Galvin. Regarding docks that have been there for 40 years and have migrated in their shape and original configuration into my waterway on Mason Lake. So
I don't think this would have anything to do with that.
Not really.
Because, you know, the law is the law. Anything that's outside the law, the only thing this would be is in regards to the properties that this is over. For example, like the ones built over the water. If it's built over the water illegal, it's still illegal. If it's built on your property, it's still on your property, and that's not proper.
Well, what is real property, I guess, and what does the homeowner really own into the lake is an issue.
Okay, thank you. We'll use that, we'll take that, please take the
We'll let you know
opportunity
when
when we
that
open
is.
for public testimony to make your comments. It's important consideration, it really is. Okay, so that is something to consider, is these comments. Thank you.
Just, by way of clarification perhaps for this gentleman, the first sentence, the first words on each of these are existing lawfully constructed structures, lawfully constructed structures, existing lawfully established uses. So those are the requirements to have standing for these clauses to apply.
Thank you. And then we did receive some, I thought, compelling testimony regarding self-contained equipment and shorelines that I think that we might want to consider reviewing. An example from the Pierce County Code, or the SMP. And Cal, looks like you're ready to discuss that.
I can discuss this.
First of all, do you what I didn't get was citation of where we would make some adjustments in the draft plan. Do you have?
That I don't have,
Okay, thank you.
but I can discuss it generally.
Okay, thank you.
So I understand that there is a, this came about because of a specific property owner who's got a structure that we are currently seeing as not allowed. In our, currently we do allow, so you're familiar with the common line, and when you have a residential structure on a shoreline lot, whether it's marine or lake, we have a common line setback with minimum and maximum setbacks. And forward of that common line, we do allow some things at grade for a certain amount in the setback area, and then the rest is left for buffer towards the water. There are, in our resource ordinance, we do allow for structures that don't require building permits to be allowed forward of that common line with a habitat management plan and a Mason environmental permit. But it has to be at least 15 feet setback from the ordinary high water mark per our current shoreline master program. So in this instance where, this proposal is similar, if not the same, as what we allow today, but perhaps without the habitat management plan. But it would have to be a structure that would not require a building permit, so no plumbing, electrical, etc. Could not, and it would have to be at least 15 feet back from the shoreline. I think the instance of the property owner who's brought forth a structure, they've got a structure that's about 4 feet from the bulkhead. It would require, in this instance, it would require a mechanical permit, I understand, from our building department. So we've got two different things. We have one very specific issue that would not be addressed by what is presented as far as the Pierce County instance. So I think staff would support the Pierce County language because it's something we already do and allow with the habitat management plan and Mason environmental permit, any structure above the 30 inches and at least 15 feet back.
But you say it's currently, this type of language is currently in our resource ordinance.
Correct.
I know that the planning commission worked hard to make sure that we had consistency across them all. So would you
Right.
recommend that we go ahead and include this, or would do you recommend we defer to the resource?
I think we
ordinance?
defer to our resource ordinance unless you know that that's been removed. But I believe that our resource ordinance would still address this issue. But staff would not be supportive of allowing structures within the 15-foot setback from the ordinary high water mark.
Okay. So, I mean, I think that the public comment that we received is from the Mutter family, are referring to a barbecue, just for people's knowledge. And I'm thinking if you know, say they were to move it into a certain area and you require a habitat management plan over a barbecue, I'm having trouble trying to figure out what that means and what that looks
Right.
like.
Can I ask a question on that? 'Cause
Sure.
There's different kinds of barbecues. Are we
Sure.
talking about building a brick
So-
facility right there at the water line?
So an actual
Construction?
barbecue, say you have a hibachi, you've got a Weber, a barbecue, that's not something that the planning department would look as a structure or enforce or inquire. This particular thing that's been called a barbecue is actually a very adorable, aesthetically pleasing hobbit house, as I like to call it, which I enjoy, and I think if we had design standards, you know, maybe we could come up with something. But to put a structure that is, it's a wood structure, I'm not sure how tall this thing is, but I'll pass that around. That's very different than a barbecue on a bulkhead. It is a structure. If we were to allow something like that, then we would allow things like tough sheds and, you know, other maybe less aesthetically pleasing that could impact neighbors' views. In this particular case, maybe it doesn't impact neighbor views, but in other shoreline properties, you could start impacting the aesthetics of the neighboring properties, as well as enjoying the shoreline from the water's edge.
Well, obviously, that's built
Yeah.
there. It's not just set there.
Apparently, it is it's something that you can, it's prefabbed, and it is something that you can put up and take down in 4 hours. So
Is that part
it
of the-
isn't constructed, but our building department has indicated because of something in there, it would require a mechanical permit.
There's no construction on site.
Okay, so again, what would a habitat management plan
So the
look like
habitat
for
management
something like
plan,
this?
it addresses, so you're saying, okay, we're gonna place the structure in a buffer, so typically this buffer would have to maintain natural vegetation, et cetera, but we're gonna place this structure here. And so you do a habitat management plan to mitigate for the impact of that structure. If it has, you know, something, that picture shows an already disturbed shoreline, there's no natural vegetation, and so perhaps you'd plant some natural vegetation to mitigate for the impact of the development.
With that definition is what we're looking at here, could you take a small modular unit and just drop it on there? There's no construction, it just literally sit into place, and it doesn't have to be attached to the ground.
Of the draft proposal, of what you're looking at, yes, as long as it was at least 15 feet back from the ordinary high water mark.
Okay. And remind me, if the bulkhead is closer, do you still have to maintain that
Typically, the
15 feet.
bulkhead is the face of the ordinary high. If there's a bulkhead, it's typically the ordinary high water mark.
Okay.
The face of the bulkhead.
So it has to be 15 feet back from that?
Correct.
Is that some property line as well?
Well,
It's just a big structure. I mean, it could be this thing looks like it could be a sauna. You could.
Well, actually, that's what I was talking about a modular. You could actually,
It's a tiny home. You could live in it.
but there is a barbecue in the middle of it. Is that a barbecue?
Yeah. Or
Or you could
a
make a
fireplace or
Yeah,
something?
fire pit.
Big.
So it sounds like there's a question from the audience. Did you have a question for Kel on this topic?
Well, I'd like to know what the setbacks would be as far as from a property owner next door.
So on
If you have
sideline,
an obstruction, 15 feet would obstruct your view. If I have a deck that can't go any closer than 50 feet from the water's edge. That's what Rebecca told me. You know, so if you have something 15 feet on your neighboring property within 15 feet of the water, the bulkhead, high water mark, probably obstruct my view.
Okay, so there's no question there. Okay, thank you. Commissioners, did you have any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you. Then we will go ahead and open for public testimony. If you'd like to testify, please raise your hand. If you're recognized, come to the podium. State your name.
Madam Chair, just to clarify, this is a continuation, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
We had our first hearing in October, I believe.
October.
Okay. Sir, if you could state your name and if you'd like, your address, but that's not required.
My name is John Egbert. And I wrote a letter to the commission, and I appreciate you considering my comments. I just wanted to briefly emphasize that my concern is over water activities that generate large wakes. Recently, in the last number of years, wake surfing has become very popular, and the boats are designed to generate very large wakes. And those wakes, when they come crashing to the shore, tend to cause damage to floating docks. And I'm concerned about the ability of the property owners to repair those docks or to convert a floating dock to a pile-supported dock. And my request is that the permitting procedures for that be very simple and not burdensome, and that the permitting costs be not punitive. The cost of construction alone is huge enough, and to kind of poke the homeowner in the eye with a huge permit fee and very burdensome procedures is something that's going to limit property owners' ability to accomplish the change. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Is there any way you see that we can incorporate any of that into what we're doing? Because we're not going to deal with the permitting or anything in this aspect of it.
But I think he also raises a point of,
Just briefly, in response.
please.
Again, Rick Moraz, Department of Ecology. There is a streamlining effect almost immediately with the change, because you're basically absorbing the resource ordinance within the Shoreline Master Program. So there will no longer be a Mason environmental permit associated with these structures and no fee associated with that. The repairs that Mr. Egbert talked about should typically qualify for shoreline exemptions, not permits. So again, that is probably the least expensive shoreline action that the county takes. And I speak with some experience. I was a Mason County planner for 5 years. So.
What about, Rick, what about the, excuse me, Madam Chair.
Please.
If I might question Mr. Moraz, what about Mr. Egbert's issue of converting to I assume, to a more substantial...
Rigid structure.
Rigid structure, yes.
And
perhaps
that-
attached to the surface.
There is nothing in the exemption language that would prohibit that as normal repair and maintenance, as long as he stayed within the existing footprint of the structure that was legally established.
That's considered a repair or maintenance?
Oftentimes, these structures are repaired by totally replacing them.
No, but on a floating dock?
To change a floating to a fixed pier, as long as you're still in the same footprint, that's still in the context of repair and maintenance.
Interesting.
Yeah, because if it's a common practice and you're responding to environmental conditions and you're staying within the existing permitted footprint, it is part and parcel of the same effect. What may happen, and what any individual who has a dock on any freshwater lake in Mason County may encounter, is that the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife is going to ask them for something very different under the state hydraulic code. The hydraulic, and that is where Mason County tried to balance what the existing master program said and what the wishes of the Planning Commission were, and the citizens who testified, is that they want to be able to repair and maintain their existing structure with the pressures that are really evident in the black and white text of the hydraulic code, which require people who do repair and maintenance of their structures to add grading, and to, if they're going to totally replace, to potentially shrink the structure to a narrower width. That is in a different WAC. It's administered by Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, And it will probably be a reality for people who want to move forward with total replacement at that time.
The part that I just caught, though, is you use the term permitted footprint. Is your dock permitted? Or
Legally
your
established.
floater- Okay. well,
Legally
that's different.
established.
So legally established because it's been there for years. Okay.
Yeah, if you can demonstrate your structure predates the master program, it's grandfathered
These
as
days,
well.
it's easy. It's called Google Maps.
Yes.
They've got pictures from many years back to prove everything. Thank
Does
you.
that help?
Thank you very much. That's news for a lot of people.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't think of that
I-
being a repair.
yeah, me either.
It's considered a repair. Okay.
One other comment that Mr. Egbert included in his comment letter, I just wanted to address because he didn't raise it in his Skokie testimony, but he asked for streamlining for boat lifts. And this was a significant discussion at the Planning Commission, and on page 103, I just wanted to point out that the Planning Commission did address that.
103?
For boat lifts, 103 and the master program under docks. For boat lifts, in freshwater habitat management plan is not required to install a boat lift adjacent to an existing dock. They really did want to actually streamline that approach, and so they clarified that you don't need the habitat management plan.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else would like to testify? Ma'am? On any issue here in the draft plan that we're considering.
My name is Janet Mutter. We wrote a letter to the commissioners and Tim Gates at the Washington State Ecology Department, basically asking for definition of an appurtenant structure in the shoreline master plan. A pertinent structure can be 600 square feet, and it can be used as a shed or any other means for a private family, single family, to enjoy their property. So we have a 10 by 10 foot covered barbecue, 100 square feet. And the county, we put it up after we had been denied a permit for a cabana. This was back in 1999. So in 2003, we purchased this. It's called a Finland grill house. And there's a barbecue in the middle of it. And I showed pictures of, this is what it looks like. We put it up on pavers, and it just attaches to the wood around. Our terrain is such that you cannot see this from we own the lot next door as well.
I just wanted to share, you're testifying to us, not.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought, okay. Well, you have all the information. They don't. Okay. So we own the lot next door. You cannot see this barbecue from either neighbor's property. We can't even see it from our property looking down. We have a barbecue, we have a bulkhead that was constructed with building permits. And we had to put a jog, or I should say the builder had to put a jog in our bulkhead for smelt. We have never seen a smelt, but anyway, that's why we have a jog in our bulkhead. And so this sits back from the bulkhead. It is not 15 feet back, and I don't understand who determined 15 feet for the wildlife. We have bird feeders all over our yard, and we have more birds than you can imagine. And it is landward of our bulkhead. We have fish jumping out there all the time, and we cannot see why we cannot put this barbecue there. We're paying waterfront taxes, and we can't use our beach. It doesn't make any sense. And our neighbors, when we took it down, the county made us take it down or we would be fined $1,000 a day. They said, where did that cute little structure go? And nobody could understand why we had to take it down. This was 13 years ago. It's been in our garage, and we want to use it. And I said to my family, in my lifetime, that's going up. And I'm 78. I don't have a whole lot of time left. So we're asking for your permission to put this barbecue back on our property. So.
Just gonna, Madam Chair, just
And
gonna ask,
I would like, pardon?
I'm just gonna ask, where's your property located? I saw the
Totten
pic-
Shores.
And where?
Totten Shores.
Totten Shores, okay, thank you.
And I have to tell you, with the geoduck manufacturing in our area, we no longer have a very pretty beach. Neighbors with high banks are using their property for geoduck production. And it is a residential area.
Thank you.
You know, I can appreciate, Ms. Mutter, your concerns, et cetera. As was stated earlier, this is a statewide plan that we partner with the state on, and the reduction of impacts to the shorelines is something that is almost in the eye of the beholder, or the beauty of not having things on the shoreline. And I believe what the state has wanted us is trying to do is to reduce the cumulative impact. My particular structure may not be offensive here, but unfortunately, when you look at the accumulation across all of the Puget Sound, that I believe is where, and I'm not saying I agree with it, I've been trying to follow this, how we are being environmentally friendly while still allowing development on our shorelines. One of the things...
The structure in the plan doesn't say anything about 15 feet.
Okay, thank you. That's worth considering.
Madam Chair, the 15 feet, could you please explain where that comes from?
Yeah, in our current shoreline master program, the minimum setback is 15 feet. It's our resource ordinance that we adopted much later on that had the minimum setback of 35 feet up to 100. And so we balance, we've been balancing, now they're integrated, so it'll be easier. But the 15 feet came originally from the shoreline master program.
Okay,
As a minimum setback for the
question becomes,
urban
is that
area.
something that we can discuss, or is that something that the state is telling us? Is there any other than our personal preference, is there any other basis for that,
Flexibility
for that being in there?
That I'm
I'll
not
take an
aware of,
answer
but
from any one of you.
I can't answer for the state. I actually am not aware we have minimum setbacks.
Yeah, I mean, that structure setback has been in place since 1975 in Mason County, so I think that probably drives a lot of the discussion, because when you have a history of 45 years of telling people this is how we're doing it, it does make it challenging to then say, oh, you can do it a totally different way now. So there's kind of a weight of evidence and a weight of history when you've been asking everyone to do that for good reasons. Structures are more vulnerable when they're right on the edge of the shoreline, and if they're actually, it's real development and it's substantial development, you could see how you'd have a really different shoreline. So I think that's the weight of it, but there is certainly local discretion in these master programs. If there was a way to carve out through the existing program a way to reduce the effects of structures on existing built areas, there's certainly other areas where you've done that. Like for water-dependent uses, you have 0 setbacks where you're allowed to access the water. That's one of the use preferences in the Shoreline Management Act. So it's not like there's any kind of bright line that says you can't ever build on right on top of the shoreline. Sometimes you have to, and in those cases, we say you shouldn't preclude that. So we actually have, it's not like the state is saying don't develop the shoreline. It's actually the policy of the act is to plan for and foster all reasonable and appropriate uses.
Okay, so they're water dependent. Yes.
Okay, so the clarification, so it is not a state, it is a local decision on the 15 feet. So the question then becomes a different question. Let's say we do not address this today, that we send this back to the Planning Commission, because that's the place where it should be discussed and vetted out. Would it be able to be implemented and put into this plan at a future date, or what would be the restriction on something like that?
Well, the Planning Commission is really good at this. They've been working with a lot of detailed questions, and I think that would make sense. I think the points that Kel made about making sure that you address neighborhood impacts can't be overstated. That was one of the major things we had to deal with throughout this whole SMP process. Is people make investments. It's not just the Mutters, but all their neighbors, and it's not their project specific. It's how does this apply to all the other circumstances And as Cal said, if you allow this within the 15 feet, how would that apply to all the other possible things that people might propose?
Well, I agree with that. My question again, though, is let's say we don't address it in this now. Is there an issue if we were to send that issue back, if we pass this today, and we send that issue back to the Planning Commission to be looked at, to be added into this at a later date, is my question.
And on top of that, just address, how do you amend the SMP once it's been adopted?
Well, okay,
Or
so
can you?
so another point. We brought this up at the last meeting. We didn't emphasize it today, but this is just the commissioner's hearing on this master program is just the first of two. So the things that you don't address locally, we're going to have another entire state comment period on what you adopt. So then we're going to get public comments again. I know it sounds redundant, but that's how the statute is written. And the way that ecology works is we work collaboratively with the county to address those comments. So you could defer this issue and any others that lated issues where you feel like you don't have the time or you don't want to try to address every single comment, because it could go on forever. But you have another opportunity during the state comment period.
Opportunity, or, I'm trying to specify our role, that we can have that added, and you can vet it. You still have your issues for vetting and doing your thing. I just want to see if we still have our authority to have that change inputted in for that determination.
Certainly.
Tim, so I want to, just from a legal perspective, when the Department of Ecology's open public comment period is there, if we've received comment, for it to be considered in your consideration, would it need to be then sent again to the Department of Ecology? Or can we bring topics that were brought to us prior to our adoption?
Yes, we can find a way to make that happen. It just seems like we can, well, there'll be a comment period, it could be resubmitted. That'd probably be the most straightforward way.
Right, but if somebody didn't hear us today, et
Yeah,
cetera, et cetera.
that'd be the most straightforward way. It's a separate comment period. But the county could just simply provide the comments during the comment period and say, here's some stuff we heard at the local level. So that would be another way that people would, citizens wouldn't have to do it again.
I see. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Process.
Rick, do you have any other?
If I may, just a little more context and background. The reason that the Mason County Shoreline Master Program has the setbacks and the buffer widths in it that it has in the draft now are the result of extensive shoreline inventory and characterization that looked at shorelines throughout the county and determined what existing conditions were in those areas. In addition, it used the best available science documents that inform the current county resource ordinance and were vetted in the fires of years of GMA hearings. So the reason Mason County's document says what it says about buffers and setbacks now are based upon those science foundations. If the county chose to take another dimensional standard forward, it would need to revisit its entire inventory and characterization and its cumulative impacts analysis, which were documents that were prepared in support of this current draft, and determine, as Commissioner Jeffries alluded to, what would the cumulative effects be of allowing these sorts of additional structures inside a 15-foot setback or a different setback entirely, countywide or in different shoreline environments, and how that would play out across the county, and what would the county's ultimate response be to that requirement for no net loss of ecological function.
And I might agree with that partially, except for the fact that that would be what we'd ask them to look at, but not in total. The only thing I'm looking at or talking about is the non-permanent structures, and what some of those are. I'm not sure that your structure would even fit in my definition of what that is, because that is something that is actually built and set up, but it may be with the Planning Commission may have a different view of something like that. But I don't think we'd have to go through, if we were to look at this, have a complete inventory analysis of everything we're doing because of that discussion. I think that might be a little bit of over.
It just depends on what the results of the discussion were. Changes in the document at this point need to be considered in how much different are they from the initial proposal, and how well they comport with the the inventory characterization and the cumulative impacts analysis now.
Well, that's one of the things that I want to be careful of, because literally, you know, I can see the pushback just right now, and you're the one that goes to. So here comes the problem. Do we need to discuss this now, or is this something we send forward? Because if we put it in our plan, if the planning commission had put that forward, we wouldn't be having that discussion that you're doing, just because they had taken it as a specific subject.
Yeah, we would
So-
have been talking about it then.
Yeah, you'd have talked about it then, but not that everything would have to change, so.
I think that's why we brought the Pierce County draft language to you, was that it was something that had been proposed, that Ecology had looked at with the county in the context of a shoreline master program amendment, and were comfortable with. The need, as Commissioner Jeffries alluded to, for a habitat management plan is eliminated, because there are qualifiers in that clause that say you cannot do this if you have to remove a lot of native vegetation. So there are steps that one would have to go through to say, well, yeah, I don't have this, or this on my property. I am locating this kind of structure within, outside of the 15-foot setback. It seems, at a bare minimum, a reasonable limit to ask someone 15 feet. 15 feet is
Well,
awfully
unless
close
it's
to
a
the
bulkhead.
shoreline.
See, that's my issue. I'm looking at it, there's a difference between the two. You know, a bulkhead or sitting up high becomes a different conversation. I can understand it with a regular shoreline. That makes, 15 feet, especially with the type of storm that can come in, or at 15 feet can sometimes be absolutely nothing. But on a bulkhead or whatever, being able to utilize it for some small.
Perhaps, I don't, we shouldn't just do this back and forth, but there are a number of experiences I've had in Mason County with people wanting to raise their bulkheads because they are now being overtopped on a much more regular basis, and the FEMA maps actually show a portion of the upper part of the property landward of the bulkhead in the floodplain now because of increased storm surge and higher tidal incursions. So again, allowing people to get right on top of it may cause them to have a rather rapid retreat at some point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to open that up for more public testimony. Is there anybody else who'd like to testify? Mr. Reese.
I'm Jim Reese from Mason Lake, and I have sent your previous documents on the 19th and the 24th. I got one that I sent in this time. If I can, for just a minute on the barbecue, it's a popular subject. If you were to have a boat, and even our pontoon boat, when we order it, you can order it with a barbecue on the pontoon boat. I think it's ridiculous to have a barbecue on a boat, personal opinion. But you could have a barbecue and you could moor that on a dock in front of your property, or you could beach the boat on your property and still have this barbecue right there. So there should be some logic to bring, I haven't seen the pictures of what's proposed on the shoreline, but something that's related to what could be done on the water also. Just an added comment. I spent a number of years, as you know, on this, probably 6 years I've been attending these different meetings with the PAC. And three things came to my mind since the last meeting, which you have a copy of. Seems like some sort of elastic clause may be in order, but even in talking here, I'm a little more confused now, you might say. If you currently have an 8-foot floating dock, and the waves are really beating that dock up, and you want to replace it with a piling dock, my understanding of the SMP, it would be restricted to a 6-foot width. Now, just listening now a few minutes ago, if you go in for a repair and so on, apparently, which I did not understand, you could replace an 8-foot floating dock with an 8-foot piling dock, even though the SMP is saying that 6 feet is max. Great effort was taken with the PAC when they developed the grandfathering clause, that even if you have a permitted use, permitted dock that's 10, 12 feet wide, and you want to repair or replace that, it would be permitted. And as long as you maintain the current envelope. That's one thing I would like to see addressed, at least in the grandfathering section, to clarify it, or some elastic clause. The second issue is that docks are restricted now to 65 feet. But if you have an area where you've got 120-foot long docks, and there's a property owner that wants to add a dock in there that doesn't have an existing dock, and all the neighbors' docks are 120 feet, putting in a 65-foot dock makes it very difficult to get a boat into, may not have the proper water depth and so on. So if there was some way that those could be addressed on a case-by-case issue, would seem appropriate. Last comment is, if you have a piece of property and a neighbor has built a dock that encroaches on your property based on the extension of property lines. Now, in my personal case, we built our dock and thought we knew exactly where the property lines were, so on and so forth. However, after having built it, what have you, we had it surveyed and found out the property lines were not exactly as we thought. So we have a crook in our dock now. It looks kind of strange. We did not encroach on anybody's property. We are still away from the property. You have to make these adjustments. What I would advocate is if somebody has an encroachment, that encroachment not be counted against their ability to put a dock on their property. So if parcel A has an encroachment of some dock that's been encroached on that property from property B, and the property owner A wants to build a dock, it seems to me they should be permitted to build one, provided there's space and so on their property to permit a dock to be built. I see a puzzled
How would
look.
it not now?
Well, I understand now if you have a parcel now, as I understand, and there's a neighbor's dock that encroaches on your property, then it's a dock that's already on your property, even if it's owned by the neighbors and so on, because it's on your property. You can't use it or anything else, but it's on your extension of your property lines. So if you want to apply and add a dock to your property, the answer is no, because there's already an existing dock on your property, even though it's the neighbor's encroachment.
Can't imagine that happening very often.
Well,
So to
I
address
hear
it,
you.
but maybe not, okay.
I hear
Okay,
you,
so-
and I've heard about it, so I bring it up because in all these years, 6 years, that never came up, never thought about it. We worked on grandfathering, worked on a lot of subjects, but these three issues came to mind since the last public hearing.
One of the questions I would have, and I'm a realtor, I should know this, but and I think I do, you usually only own to the water line. So do we have lakes where we're actually owning to the center of the lake?
There are parcels that go out over the water.
I know on saltwater you see it a lot, but I don't see much of that in lake. So I'm trying to figure out how that would work.
It could be that it's DNR leased lands, but there's a way, and I'm not a surveyor, but I believe, so your property lines, and then however the lines go out, that's your portion, that is allowed to have docks. If it's not owned by you, then DNR and.
So freshwater lakes, DNR has freshwater lakes.
Yeah, the state, yeah. Haven Lake, Wooten Lake own their property lines out to the middle instead of the meander line?
Yeah, they go way out in the middle. They're like wedges and they meet in.
Interesting.
So how does that affect public access? How does that affect public access?
It doesn't,
Oh,
because
but
on lakes
man-made
it's.
lake, man-made lake, they were plotted earlier. Erickson and stuff like that would probably all be like that.
There's still public access to the water, and because lakes aren't tidal, you don't have people walking on your lake bed necessarily. So there is still public access by waterway, but not to your private dock.
Yeah, in some northeastern states, you would, in the wintertime when the lakes were frozen, the surveyor would go out in the exact center and then they would survey the wedges for the property to be sold.
You're absolutely right.
It became a tradition that you bought the lake bed.
But Washington State, the state usually owns all those waterways. That's why it was.
In
I'm
my
sorry, Mr.
particular
Reese,
case-
we interrupted your testimony. Is there anything else you wanted to
In
share?
my particular case though, Randy, we purchased from the state years ago when we were allowed to, 150 feet of bottom land. So if you take our property lines, extend them out in the lake, we were able to buy 150 feet of the bottom land. So when we built our pile-driven docks, we put our piling in land that we owned. I know we can't own the water, but we have the dock. Well, those are the three comments that I had.
Okay,
Looking
thank
for
you.
an elastic clause or some way to address them.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask from staff, how are we set with that? That's an interesting comment. Are they restricted if there's already a encroaching?
No, and I'm looking forward to meeting with Mr. Alvin regarding his issue, Alan, sorry. Regarding his issue and if there's an encroachment issue. A lot of times, upland encroachments are a civil matter, maybe the same. But I don't know the details of the
Well, I
situation.
think they're always going to be civil. That'd be.
But we do not.
I was told it was permit, and I needed to go back to Mr. Wyndham on Friday, so I didn't find anything.
Okay, thank you.
Is it new? It's been there more than 7 years?
There's no statute of limitations, according to Rob Johnson.
Not if it's permit. If it was
There
never.
was never a conditional permit put on this dock that encroaches 85 feet out and elves into my waterway. It doesn't matter who the owner was, whether it was 45 years ago.
There's no permit.
Or not.
No.
So,
Okay.
by definition, it falls under community use dock. And if I was to allow that, or we were to allow as property owners to use that as community, I could not put in my own dock.
Thank you. Is anybody else, sir?
Hi, I'm Philip Plattner. I was here in October, and I want to thank the commissioners and the planning department, and I assume maybe even the Department of Ecology for their flexibility in looking over the west side of Lake Cushman issues. There was one thing that I brought up in a letter that I sent to all of you folks, and which I guess I don't know if it's even worth mentioning, but when you're talking about redoing some of the documents here, there was one thing that I happened to mention sort of as an afterthought, was on the west side of Lake Cushman, many properties don't have road access, which is one reason why I think a lot of the lots have never been developed, and it's more of a challenge to develop that, and it would be warranted to, if you ever want to develop it, to have a dock so you could access it. Otherwise, you'll be offloading, through the rocks and the logs and this and that. It'd be very difficult. And also, as you get older, my wife's going to have knee surgery here in February, and I've got bad knee and bad back and this and that. It's handy to have a stable structure to get out of a boat to get to your property instead of trying to climb, climb over. I had back surgery a week ago tomorrow, but so at any rate, whether that's kept in mind, that to make some sort of statement in whatever the permitting rules are about building. I think I heard that people say that usually, or the situation is that it's once you have a structure, then you're allowed to build the dock. But in certain situations on the west side of Lake Cushman, and probably there would be other situations elsewhere in Mason County where you have a buildable piece of property that is not accessible by a road, where you could get a truck in and get various building supplies delivered. But whether there's any consideration for that or not, and perhaps Ms. Atkins knows what the story is in that regard, but I thought I should ask, because if something, simple might be put into whatever documents you're revising things, to make some sort of situation where there's less red tape for a person who can't access, his or her property by roadway, so they could.
I'm going to ask staff to clarify that. Kel, can you address that?
Yeah, when there's not a residence on the property, we still allow docks, but it's with a substantial development permit.
Okay. So they're still allowed.
So you can still do it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that'd like to testify?
So just to follow up on that, Madam Chair. So if that area that Mr. Patton is referring to is the west side of Lake Cushman would be in a rural designation?
Correct.
Does he still need a substantial development permit?
Only if there's no residence. If there's a residential structure, then it's just the dollar valuation like everyone else.
Okay, so no residence first, he could build the dock without the substantial development permit, and then get to the issue of a cabin or the.
Does that mean, is that the one that's a $3,500 fee or something for that, or is there?
There is a public hearing with the hearing examiner, so there's a substantial development permit fee and Huh?
Not
Oh.
anymore, you're going to process STPs administratively.
Oh, never mind. See, this is where I'm still learning about our SMP updates. We'll be processing substantial development permits administratively. So the fee might be a little bit higher, but we're no longer the hearing examiner fee, which is currently $2,005.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
So I guess I want to just be clear, let's say I'm Mr. Patton. I bought property on the west side of Lake Cushman. I can't access by a road, but I'd like to build a cabin there, and it's large enough to do that. So if I went to the department to get and the designation over there would be rural, if I went to the department to build my dock so I could unload my cabin and my mini excavator to assemble it, what type of a permit would I need to get, or could I build my dock first?
Yes, you could, but first you'd need to go to Tacoma Power to get your approval from from the landowner as the lessee, and then you'd come to the county. You'd apply for a substantial development permit that we would. Rick's going to correct me here.
Administratively
Please go.
review.
In my experience, in common practice, if somebody was doing it concurrently, just in your example, if you have a building permit for your house and you want your dock, then they'll process the dock as an exemption.
As an exemption?
Yeah. If you're building
Right.
the dock and you're not going to do anything with that property, but just access it from the water for a while, if there's a significant separation between your building permit for your house and your dock, then the dock gets permitted with an SDP. However, if this is sort of part and parcel of the same thing, I gotta build the dock so I can get my house going, then we always process those docks. And I've seen those docks processed as strong exemptions.
Okay.
The intent is clear.
Okay.
I guess the one question I have, is that reasonable or not? I don't know the answer to that, but is it reasonable to require, if you can only, if you can't, why can't you have a dock? On a piece of waterfront property that you cannot access except by water.
You can, that's what she's saying, is you
But
can.
you have to do this extra.
You're gonna have to do permits no matter what you do, but if you don't have a home, or you're not planning on building a home, there'll be a little extra step that you have to do. But it's not the big step that it used to be, because you're not gonna have to go through the hearings examiner.
Yeah, well, that's good news. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to testify? Ma'am.
I kind of don't want to, because I have a lot of things to say, and I probably am late to the game, and I should have written the comments.
Okay, can you state your name for the record, please?
Sorry. My name is Monica Harley. Is that all I need to say?
And if you'd like to say your address, that'd be fine, but you
Or
don't
where
have
you're
to.
from.
Mason County. Okay, so I guess I have a question before I can. Are you looking for comments on each of those items? The SMP, the resource ordinance, Title 9, Title 15, all that today?
Yes, Title 15 for sure. The resource ordinance, I suppose, as it has been amended to be consistent with Title, is it 17 or 15?
Well, it's my understanding that I was on the Citizen Advisory Committee, and so, we made changes to the SMP itself. At that time, we recommended just using the existing resource ordinance of Mason County and just referring to it, and that way you could just make your changes to the resource ordinance separate from the SMP. And then we didn't touch Title 17, you're calling it now, okay? So, God, I forgot what I was going to say here. Oh, yeah. So it's a little harder right now, whatever you're calling your SMP as a whole, slew of documents, and when the PAC worked with Rebecca and Rick and Tim, they put all of this stuff together and sort of just busted it up into several bits over 4 documents into 3 documents. So it's a little hard for a citizen to kind of track, where did this go? This came from here, now it's over here. I have confidence that they did put everything into proper spots, and I can see how there really was some great improvement where the policies, like if you look at timber, aquaculture, all of these, it actually does have a nice flow in that. It says, here's the policy, here's some regulations, da-da-da. But you still have to cross-reference between, like, the resource ordinance, Title 15, and the SMP itself to get at some of the same information. So that's what I was trying to do recently, and I just wanted to tell you, I don't think this is finished. The SMP is done. I really hope you guys don't decide today to say, we're just going to give it to Ecology and then deal with all of these unfinished things
And Mayor,
later.
The things that we have just been discussing prior to you.
Those are, yeah, small ones.
So could you please share what else?
Okay. Well, small things, such as when I was reading through Title 15, just a minute. Title 9, sorry. They keep referring to Title 15, okay. What is, Title 15 was Title 9, right?
No.
No. Okay.
Title 9
The
is
comprehensive plan.
Chapter 9 is what she's talking about.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I got those mixed up. Chapter 9 got put into everything else. Okay. So Title 15 is the comprehensive plan, and Title 17 was Title 8. Correct? Title 8 got renamed to Title 17.
Chapter, yeah, 17.5. Right. Go ahead.
Title 8 is where our resource ordinance resides, and then Title 17 is where our shoreline master program resides. Title 15 is our administrative code that talks about public hearings and how we do things administratively, or the types of permits. And then Title 9, Chapter 9 is the shoreline master program policies from the comprehensive plan.
Those were
Okay.
And those were
Thank you.
taken out and integrated into Title 17.50.
The policies.
The policies and regulations together.
Okay. Okay, so now I'm even more confused. Because, okay, well, I guess that's my point, is, after looking at it, I can't find certain things. What I thought was in Title 8 is in 17. And I don't think between all of the documents there's consistency. Sometimes it's called Title 17, sometimes it's called Title 8, and it's referring to similar things. The definitions aren't in alignment with themselves, especially concerning aquaculture and agriculture.
Okay, I appreciate that, but you're being so generic that I'm having difficulty trying to figure out what would you want to see changed, and so.
Okay,
and
what I'm
maybe you're not
saying is,
prepared
I
for that, and I
think,
can understand that.
I'm saying, I think everything is 89% finished, okay, or 92% finished. I don't think this slew, although they're mostly finished, I don't think they're done enough. I think Rebecca stopped right before she finished taking, like I said, these 4 documents and squishing them into 3, but mixing them up and putting bits of this over to here. Bits of the resource ordinance got put into the SMP. Bits of the SMP got put into the resource ordinance. I mean, it all got, you can't hardly track where it went. And so as I go through, like I started with the definitions, something like aquaculture. The aquaculture references are in all 3 documents. And there are inconsistencies, like in some examples, in the definition, under agriculture definition, they include aquaculture. Now, I'm sure they're talking about finfish, because when I looked under finfish aquaculture, it said this will be put under agriculture. So now what you have is just this mush, and it's not in everything, but especially when it concerns agriculture, aquaculture, recreation. And so what happens is, okay, am I being too vague still? So I'm starting with, you know, I'm giving you more examples in the resource ordinance, okay? Conflating agriculture, recreation, aquaculture, if you read the definition. Okay, so there's agriculture lands, there's agriculture practices, there's agriculture, all in the definitions. And then when you go look in, well, there's the S&P and the resource ordinance, and each of them talks about agriculture. And so what I'm saying is between these documents, they have to match. So right now you've got this over here, but over here it's just not quite aligned with it. And so somebody looking to see, you know, what are the rules for aquaculture? Pretty soon you see it's included in agriculture. Yet agriculture has their own section, and they're exempt. Existing agriculture is exempt. So what I'm saying, it's really difficult to...
I think we get what you're saying. I understand.
So I would encourage you to don't jump ahead yet. Let's finish it. I'd be glad to send my specific comments, but I did need more time because there wasn't good tracking. There was good tracking on the SMP, but not on the resource ordinance. Where did all that stuff get put? And there's pages gone, but they got put elsewhere. It's just not with reference. So it's like 4 times as hard for a person walking in to find it. Okay? So, but I will give us specific concerns I have with permitting. Okay? It was hard for me to figure out the process. Number one, I have concerns about how SEPA is incorporated, because according to what I read in Title 15, I guess, it looked like the whole streamlining thing was going to result in lack of oversight for the SEPA process. Because in these documents it said Mason County wouldn't be reviewing anything that had already been approved SEPA in another agency, like Ecology. So basically, you need specific citations of where it's at. Permitting, Title 15, page 11. The county must be allowed to go over previously reviewed applications with SEPA or other environmental information previously reviewed by another agency. And of course, I have personal experience with that on my lake because the Department of Ecology unfortunately approved a SEPA that had all inaccurate information. So by the time it came to Mason County, when the county was able to review, it made a difference. So now, according to the, that page I told you in Title 15, Mason County will no longer be reviewing anything. That's part of this whole streamlining of permitting that's allowed in these documents. Is you're giving up, in my opinion, your county rights to oversee what another county or what another agency failed to do. Other agencies make mistakes. So that's why, like, Fish and Wildlife should be allowed to comment as well. Okay. So anyway, that concerns me. And then, of course, aquaculture, the gooey duck regulations, I'm finding not good. Especially two things. I don't think gooey duck should be allowed in natural environmental designations So that's the chart. I think it should be a X instead of a C. Just because if you look at your definition in the SMP itself, what is a natural environmental designation? It precludes, it just precludes PVC pipes and wall-to-wall. It's just, that will change it from natural to a different environmental. And then I was concerned about the aquaculture regulations where it says if you have an existing aquaculture on your property, such as just whatever, mussels, clams, oysters, it can be turned into geoduck without any additional permit. So that's like, not good. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's the best I can do. I really hope you guys don't approve this today, and then just allow a whole lot more written comment, and then clarify, and then when you send it to Ecology, hope your Mason County part is really finished. Like your question about, hey, can we change something later? Not so easily. And that's really why originally the Citizen Advisory Committee recommended only changes to the SMP itself. And then that's what you submit to Ecology and reference the resource ordinance. But, what the PAC did was they said, no, we're not doing that. We're going to take all this stuff, we're going to put it into an SMP. Well, now your regulation or your control is going to be outside of Mason County and much more difficult to change, because it's a change to an SMP is now a change to an SMP. I mean, a change to your resource ordinance in the future is a change to an SMP. So I think it's okay what you did, but I think you're losing a lot.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to testify? Hearing none, I will close public testimony. Move to Commissioner deliberations. Commissioners, I'm feeling like there's a lot of revisions that we need to contemplate, and I would like to move for adoption, but I'm hesitating to do that in this venue unless we want to work through them one by one. I feel like we need to probably have some consideration of some of these revisions based on discussion with staff. We can do that here in this setting. I would need a break first. Or we could continue again this hearing. And that's just my recommendation for discussion.
I could go either way. I think we could get this part through if we were to read each one of them. We'd have to read each one into the record without a doubt. One of the ones I'm going to have further question on is self-contained equipment in the shoreline. The idea of adding that, I'm comfortable with adding that into our policies, but the 15 foot is a restriction that is in our resource ordinance, not in the shoreline master plan. Is that correct?
Other way around. It's under the master program, and the resource ordinance has actually a minimum of a 20-foot buffer with a 35-foot, or an additional 15-foot setback, so it's 35. So 15 is the least restrictive.
Okay. Thank you.
So you can go either way on that one. Commissioner, do you have a preference to finish this up today?
Well, I'd like to finish it today. I have an appointment at noon, and then another meeting I have to be at 1:30.
Okay. So go ahead and... Okay, so you'd like to finish today, you can go either way. I would frankly prefer to do this in a more systematic fashion.
Mm-hmm.
As in have it all included and then bring it forward again?
Yeah.
You want to include testimony?
If you did that, I think you're seeing testimony is dwindling. I think we're just down to some of the fine points here. If you came back with another product, if you continued the hearing, you'd have to continue it to a time specific. You're running out of meeting times in December. You're going to run up against the holidays. So, in my experience, all I'm saying.
It can be brought back next week as long as we have all this included to be adopted as a...
I feel pretty comfortable with what we've done with Lake Cushman. It's a big issue for my district.
I am too.
So,
thank you, by the way, to you guys for all that hard work that was you coming forward trying to work with us to make it work. Thank you.
Yeah.
And our staff.
So I think that's a pretty big issue. And the self-contained structures that I have real misgivings about making certain exemptions. I think we addressed that pretty well when we talked about setting a precedent and working with all the shorelines as a classification. Once we start to make very specific exemptions, I think there'll be everything new on the block will come in and be very hard, very difficult to have conformity and uniform.
So what I'm hearing is a desire by you, Commissioner Sheldon, to work through each of these requested testimony and either propose amendment or reject them. Is that a process that you would concur with, or?
Can you be comfortable with doing that and doing it? Can we get them out by noon? Because I think that was this other.
Yeah, could we finish that? I mean, if we took a 20-minute recess, could the staff come back with some recommendations that would we could vote on?
Yes. Yes, we can do that.
Okay.
Wow. All right.
As amendments? Individually, can you take them individually?
Those that were addressed in the comment letters?
Yes.
Yes.
No, there's some that didn't have recommendations, and so, for the public's knowledge, I love line in, line out recommendations. It makes it much easier. I'm sorry.
Could we do that? I mean, come back in 20 minutes and deal with
Yeah,
those
we would like to
outstanding
come back in
issues?
20 minutes and using the comment letters address what amendments we would like to propose, staff's proposal, that then you could move forward.
So
to
the second question is, can you think with that we have the ability to address all of them individually and get them out by noon?
Well, no, it's just not just me, but I think, could you do that or finish it in that amount of time?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so.
It's up to us to make the.
I would like to take a 20-minute recess. We will reconvene at 11:30, in which time we will address some amendments and consider some amendments to the draft. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Can I have a couple minutes of your time?
Sure. Hearing back into session, and I'm going to ask staff to step up and make some recommendations, and we can consider them
Hello.
with your motion.
Okay, Kel McBoy, Mason County Planning Department. I would like to propose, staff would like to propose the commission adopting and approving the draft Shoreline Master Program with the following changes. The first one is addressing the self-contained equipment in shorelines. And staff proposes that we add language to the definition section 17.50.020 to the definition of development. It would state, and this is as proposed by the Department of Ecology.
17.7.
17.50.020.
Let me get to this section real quick before you.
And the definition of development.
And that's alphabetical, right? Yay.
Random.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Siting a piece of equipment on the ground or platform is not development if the action meets the following criteria. It consists entirely of a self-contained piece of equipment that is typically fabricated off-site and placed on the site as a unit. It involves no construction on-site. Some assembly of equipment parts is allowed. It is not permanently affixed to the ground or other surface or platform. It does not require a building permit, mechanical permit, or plumbing permit. It is not located at or waterward of the ordinary high water mark. It is on private property. It is not on a tract, easement, or other conveyance that provides for public access. It does not include any of the actions listed in the definition for development. Placement of self-contained equipment is subject to the SMP vegetation requirements, and it is not a recreational vehicle as defined in the county code.
You want to take these one at a time or all of them?
Let's take them one at a time.
Okay. I'm comfortable with that recommendation.
Is there a motion?
Yeah. I move that we add to the language of 17.50.020, language stating the siting of a piece of equipment on the ground or platform is not development if the action meets the following criteria. Consists entirely of self-contained piece of equipment that is typically fabricated off-site and placed on-site as a unit. It involves no construction on-site. Some assembly or equipment parts is allowed. It is not permanently affixed to the ground or other surface or platform. It does not require a building permit, mechanical permit, or plumbing permit. It is not located on a waterward or ordinary high water mark. It is on private property. It is not on a tract, easement, or other conveyance that provides for public access. It does not include any of the actions listed in the definition for development. That it is placement of self-contained equipment is subject to the SMP vegetation requirements, and it is not a recreational vehicle as defined by the county code.
I'll second the motion, Madam Chair.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the amendment to section 17.50.020, amending the definition of development as stated in the motion. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Okay, the second change that staff recommends is to retain the conservancy designation for the area north of, on Highway 101 near the Girl Scout camp. That map change has been made.
Madam Chair, I would move that the Board of County Commissioners retain the conservancy designation for the, I think it's called Wiki-Tick Creek area.
Wiki-Tiki?
Wiki-Tiki Creek
Yes.
area, west side of Hood Canal.
I will second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we retain the conservancy designation for the area at the Wiki-Teak Creek area west on the west side of the Hood Canal, and adopt that as a map change.
Just to further discussion, if I might.
Please.
So a question, I assume that just encompasses the property commonly known as the Girl Scout Park.
Yes.
Or Girl Scout
That is
Camp,
correct.
Robbinswold.
Yes,
Okay.
Robbinswold.
I'm very comfortable with that. Thank you.
Okay. Call for the question. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
And another recommendation is, another map change, is to retain the rural designation on the west side of Lake Cushman.
Madam Chair, I move that we retain the rural designation on the west side of Lake Cushman.
I'll second the motion.
It's moved and seconded to retain the rural designation on the west side of Lake Cushman on the designation map. Any further discussion? Thank you to the citizens of Lake Cushman for bringing this to our attention, and just I hope this encourages you that your citizen activism helps. I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
This is not a recommendation for for a change, but just a statement from staff that all the issues that were raised in testimony about docks today, we feel both staff and Department of Ecology feels that the Shoreline Master Program as drafted addresses those concerns adequately as they were raised. So we don't feel that there are any necessary changes to be made to regarding docks.
Does the commission concur with that?
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because there's as many minds as there are in the room, there can be different interpretations of things, and when you state that, you give people more certainty, and they like that because they've got plans and family and everything else to carry out some things with their property. So appreciate it. Thank you.
My question, though, is still, I need a little bit of verification that, is there an issue with somebody trying to get a dock when there's already a dock on that property, though, if it's, because that is a serious question, and it may not be able to be adopted here or changed here, but I'd like to know that we're doing something to fix that if that is an issue.
We are meeting with the individual that concern was raised, or there is an issue there, and I believe it's outside of the Shoreline Master Program.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Lastly, the staff would like to make a recommendation to the board that language regarding aquaculture be adopted as proposed in the comment letter submitted by Taylor Shellfish, with the exception, or with the addition of 4 words, and I'm going to read that section. So that the 4 words that staff would add is the administrator.
Where?
Oh,
Where?
excuse me, I'm sorry. Okay. This is in the letter from Taylor Shellfish Farms.
Which number?
And that is 17.50.210.B.1.D.
Okay.
And the underlined section halfway down in the paragraph in the comment letter, and to be preceded by, the administrator may determine a presumptively dormant area may, on a case-by-case basis, be deemed abandoned, provided clear and affirmative information evidencing an intent to abandon the area for shellfish farming is provided.
So you're adding the words, the administrator may determine. Is that correct?
Okay. Same section or something different?
No, just one more. It's
Okay,
on your
sorry.
stack.
I do have another one after this one.
Okay, so but you're adding the words, the administrator may determine.
Correct.
And then continue on.
Yes.
Okay. And you have
Okay, is that all on that
And that's
particular
all
one?
for that
Okay.
particular one, correct.
All right, Madam Chair, I make a motion, I move that we adjust the revision under MC 17.50.210.B.1.D to revise it to, see, we're adding in, it is presumed that the following areas are, we are striking out include property that was, and the word callow. And we are adding several lines down after it says factors beyond the control of the operator, period. The administrator may determine a presumptive dormant area on a case-by-case basis and be deemed abandoned, provided a clear and affirmative information evidencing an intent to abandon the area for shellfish farming is provided.
I'll second the motion, Madam Chair.
It's been moved and second to adopt amendments to section 17-50-210.B.1.D as stated in the motion. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, motion carried. I think we'll have to pick up these other ones too separately.
We have one more.
No, I mean as far as the aquaculture section.
Well, are they?
No, these are not. These are not in the. Your motion did not address the other recommended.
No, are they recommending it?
Yes, they did. They said all changes, all submitted.
Oh, all of them? Okay.
Oh, yes,
All
I'm
right.
sorry.
With the addition of 4
That
words.
was,
Well, I thought you said you brought something else up, though, that needed to be added.
we do have another issue, and
But it's not on this letter?
I failed.
It's the Steve Whitehouse.
Okay.
Yep, it's a
All right.
different issue, but I,
Then, Madam Chair, I'll make a motion, I move that we also change MC, let's see, 17.50.210.B.1.E, to strike the words "shall not materially interfere with surface water use mitigation." And to add the words after "may be required," to add the words "to provide mitigation," when, then moving forward to striking the words after "when necessary to offset," striking the words "material," and adding the word "significant."
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
So moved and second to amend the draft language in MCC 17-50-210 point, sorry, these are all points, point B, point 1, point E, and amend the language as stated in the motion. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, motion carried.
Madam Chair, I move for the revision of MC 17.50.210.B.1.I, under subsection II, or 2, most likely, I don't have the whole thing in front of me, to remove the words, to strike the words "as required by MCC 8.52.170 G, all activities in saltwater shall avoid impacts to eelgrass and kelp beds to the maximum extent practicable."
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt revised language for Mason County Code 7, in the draft of Mason County Code 17-50, or .50.210.B, .1, .II, as stated in the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, motion carried. Thank you.
and then Barbara will present the last recommendation.
Can I borrow your letter in case I need to make the motion? Thank you.
Okay, this is the last edit. This was part of our earlier discussion with the comments that came from Steve Whitehouse. This would be amendments to section 17.50.120.1A, talking about existing structures. We're going to be adding the word legal and a couple of other words in here. So let me go ahead and read the revisions. Existing lawfully constructed structures, paren, and floating homes, close paren, do not conform to the program's requirements, including those approved through a variance, shall be considered grandfathered, with the exception of residential development built over water or in floodways, which shall be considered non-conforming, legal non-conforming, and the word legal added in there. B, lawfully constructed structures, adding including legal non-conforming structures, may continue and may be maintained, repaired, and replaced within their footprints in accordance with the Act, this program, and other applicable regulations. Applications for replacements for grandfathered or for legal non-conforming structures shall be submitted within 5 years of the date of damage.
Madam Chair, I move for the amendment for 17.50.120.1, Section A and B. Under Section A, to add the word legal before the last word in the sentence, non-conforming. So it'll read legal, which shall be considered legal, non-conforming. Under Section B, we will include the words under lawfully constructed structures, we will include the words including legal non-conforming structures. It'll continue with the regular reading until we get to the point where it says within their footprints in accordance with the Act. We will strike the word and. Then it'll read this program, that we will add words and other applicable regulations, period. After that, there will be one other addition of a word. It'll read applications for replacements for grandfathered or for the addition of the word legal before non-conforming.
Where was that? There, okay.
Does that sound,
That's what I have.
you got it? Oh, you got a second then.
Okay, it's been moved and second to amend the draft language in 17.50.120.1, sections A and, subsections A and B, revising the language as stated in the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, motion carried.
Okay, then the last one is 17.50.120.2, existing uses. A, adding the word existing, lawfully established uses, and floating homes that do not conform to the program's requirements shall be considered grandfathered, with the exception of residential development built over water or in floodways and existing non-water-oriented commercial with waterfront or any non-water-oriented industrial uses, which shall be considered, adding the word legal, non-conforming.
Before I make a motion, go ahead, you haven't finished the B.
And B, grandfathered, adding the words "and legal non-conforming uses may continue and may be maintained or replaced," adding per the provisions of this program.
So before I go further with the motion, Madam Chair, I have a line-out copy that lines out the L. I think that was probably misprint because it would have said the awfully established uses.
It does look like a U, doesn't it? Yeah, it's a little L is in there and the
Okay.
big L's gone.
So let's correct that is,
Yeah, we can't
we're
regulate
only changing the
awful,
word
no.
existing, correct? Okay. Madam Chair, I move that we amend 17.50.120, number 2, section A and B. The first, under A, we will include a word existing before the word lawfully established uses. We will also include at the very end of the paragraph where it says what shall be considered non-conforming, we will add the word legal, so we'll read what shall be considered legal non-conforming. Under subsection B, after the word grandfathered, we will add in the words "and legal non-conforming" after the word grandfathered. And after the word may be maintained or replaced, we will add "per the provisions of this program." To where we'll read "grandfathered and legal non-conforming uses may continue and may be maintained or replaced per the provisions of this program."
Second the motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to amend the draft language of 17.50.120, subsection 2, A and B, as stated in the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, motion carried. That is all.
No.
Well, I mean, as far as amendments.
Yeah.
As far as amendments. Okay. Commissioners, did you have any other amendments you'd like us to consider? Okay, then, we have the full master plan that needs to be considered for approval as amended. And I would entertain a motion there, unless there's some further discussion or deliberation.
All right, well, Madam Chair, I move that the Board of County Commissioners hereby adopt and approve a resolution stating that the intent of Mason County to repeal and replace the Mason County Shoreline Master Program, Chapters 9 of the Comprehensive Plan, amend the Resource Ordinance and Development Code, and adopt a channel migration zone map.
I'll second the motion, Madam Chair.
It's been moved and seconded to approve and adopt the resolution stating the intent of Mason County to repeal and replace the Mason County Shoreline Master Program, Chapter 9 of the Comprehensive Plan, amend the Resource Ordinance and Development Code, and adopt a channel migration zone map. Is there any further discussion? Once again, thank you to everybody throughout the 6-year period that did this work. Thank you to Department of Ecology and Wildlife or DNR, I keep forgetting.
Department of Ecology.
Ecology too, okay.
Yeah, it used to be Herb for a while, weren't you? What happened? Yeah.
To staff, you guys have hung through there. Thanks for picking up when we lost our major planner on this. I want to thank the Planning Advisory Commission, all the advisory groups. This was a long haul, but this is, I think, a very, very good master program. I'm very, very proud of this, actually, and it's with great pleasure that I call for the vote.
Yeah, and thank you again to all the citizens that took an active part, participated, and all your suggestions, and thank you for coming today as well.
Thank you for giving up their lives.
They
They did.
6 years, they did.
Yeah.
They did. So, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, motion carried. It's done. Okay. Okay, so, is there any more business to come before us? We have our board reports and calendars. Which I don't have my phone. There it is. Okay. So, we are moving now to agenda item number 11, where we report any board work that we have done that we'd like to report, or share our calendars where we might be meeting together in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act. So, who would like to start? I guess I will. So,
Okay, so now, go ahead. I just gotta hand some to someone. I'll be right back.
last week, Tuesday, November 29th, I had a conference call of the Integrated Watershed Planning Group Steering Committee meeting. We had a Board of Health meeting, and we certified the election in the canvassing board. Let's see, where am I? Had a meeting with the Squaxin Island representatives, met with Department of Ecology, and with staff. Let's see, met with representatives from the WASAC, the Washington State Association of Counties, in which we then attended Senate and joint Senate and House meetings on the Hearst decision. Lewis Mason Thurston, no, that's next week. And then we had Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization meeting, and then, let's see, I went to the Lake Cushman public meeting with the Tacoma Power and all the regulatory agencies around coming into conformance with both Lake Cushman, the FERC decision, or FERC relicensing, and county on non-conforming uses or new docks and non-permitted docks. We had our budget hearing yesterday, and then commissioner briefings. I will be speaking to the Pioneer Kiwanis tomorrow morning. We have Oakland Bay Committee, Lewis Mason Thurston Area Agency on Aging, the I will be a panel on the Washington Association of Counties new commissioner orientation. And then we'll have our Washington State Association of Counties legislative priorities meeting with state legislators in the region of this particular region. I'm not sure who all's in which legislative districts, but that'll be held at the Public Works Building, and I think the other two commissioners will be there as well. And then we have the Pacific Mountain Workforce Development Council Consortium of Governments meeting, and then we're back here for commission briefings on Monday.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
All right, short form, let's see. Financial Reality Fair. That was absolutely phenomenal. We had at the Shelton High School, they took a bunch of kids that had volunteered. They went through from booth to booth to booth, and they were given a job. They were given a credit score. They were given an amount of money that they had, and they had to start from scratch and establish housing, transportation, communication, leisure, health. They had to go through all these different booths, and it was quite interesting to have them have to come back for transportation and come back to trade in the car that they had just purchased because they didn't have the money to pay for it. One wonderful young man, it was wonderful. He was only a little bit off on his money. He came back and decided to look at it differently than everybody else, and he asked if he could look at how to save money on fuel. So he looked at a vehicle. He traded in his Mazda whatever sports car that was a used sports car, and he bought himself a brand new Toyota Prius, saved on the gas, the insurance, and everything else, to the point to where he ended up saving $100 overall with his brand new car compared to his hot rod stuff that he did. So he made money by buying up. He's the only one that did that. It was pretty amazing to
funny.
watch. Very enjoyable. The reality that some of those kids faced was just hilarious, especially when I was sitting next to one lady who was selling everybody, or trying to sell everybody, an $82,000 BMW. So it was wonderful. So other than that, I met with Patty, with the Mayor of Bremerton, and she had an event up in Bremerton. We had the Belfair Parade. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. It is getting so large.
Good.
It was
Good.
it was amazing. I took pictures of it, and the crowd just extends out everywhere at the tree lighting. It was, I don't know how many people were there. I couldn't even estimate. There were so many. It just, were you there? Yeah. What would you say? 500, 1,000? It was huge. I couldn't, literally, there was so many heads you couldn't even begin to imagine or count. Budget hearing, which we adopted our budget. We had our briefings. I attended the Lower Hood Canal Watershed Coalition meeting last night in their discussion with the sewer, and meeting our new manager. I had left board meeting. I have on my calendar a tentative Board of Health meeting. I assume that we're going to have
On the
that.
14th?
Yes.
14th, yes.
So I assume we will be there for that. I have a Suboxone meeting, I have an EDC meeting, regular, and a business development meeting with the EDC. Wasac Legislative Party meetings, as was referred to by Commissioner Jeffries. I will be meeting with Commissioner-elect Kevin Shitty. I have a meeting at OSPI, which I'm not sure what that is, but they put it in my calendar, so it must be a county function, and I will be there.
OSPI?
OSPI, I think Leo did it. It has something to do with the audit committee, but it's not the audit committee. Trails and Potluck. My daughter will be doing a recital in Harstein Island. 6 years old, and she's going to be playing the piano with some down at their event down there. Her very first one, and believe me, it's just handpicked. It's so cute. I may attend the Republican meeting. I haven't attended one in a long, long time, but now the elections are over, I may attend it. Oh, please, okay, people, there is a murder mystery dinner coming up Saturday, December 17th at the Senior Hub in Belfair at 5:30. It's $25 per person. There'll be a silent auction. And if you want an acting spot, they'd still like to have you there. And I was asked to invite the commissioners.
Thank you.
Okay, I will be at the meeting on Friday as well. It'll be District 23, 24, 26, and 35. So
Okay.
Representative McEwen and Griffey will also be there.
Good.
I just want to go back to a couple things I did this last week. I did have a tour of the new mill, Sierra Pacific Mill. It's such an impressive structure, amazing, 175,000 square feet. They'll be hopefully saw on the first board this month. In full production, they could go to 550 million board feet, which is an amazing number given the fact that the Big Simpson Mill would do 300 million feet. They're going to need 250 truckloads of timber a day.
A day.
Wow.
Remind us what the ingress and egress for the trucks are going to be like.
Yeah, they'll all come in down at Goldsboro Creek there. So generally, they're going to be coming in from highway, on Olympic Highway, the old Olympic Highway, coming down the hill by Tozier's.
Down the hill and then
Right.
turn in right at the creek
And
there.
they've reconfigured the yard so that all the trucks can get in and not back up onto the highway.
Okay.
So they'll come all the way in before they scale the loads or unload, so there won't be any backup coming back. All the yard will be paved, not quite done yet. A lot of the machinery's in. Of course, the building's six stories high. You could go into all the things they have in there, but it's a great, very impressive mill. They'll only cut 2x4s and 4x4s for the residential market. It's going to be probably the most technological mill on the West Coast, for sure, but they are getting more people that applying for jobs that were previous employees at Simpson, because I think some of the people thought that they would have to do the same job in the new mill, and that's not the case. Of course, it's not a union mill, and they're looking for people that can learn the job very quickly, but it's not going to be extremely high skilled. They do have a fabrication shop inside the mill that will fabricate fab parts for all 4 mills, and that's going to be an extra 25 employees. They have the CNC machinery set up in there, so it's a very high-tech operation. And so anyway, I was very impressed, and they're working well with the tribe and the city. They thanked us very much for the involvement of the city, the county, but especially the city and the Public Utility District number 3. They had nothing but great things to say about that. They're almost 6 months ahead of schedule. You know, they had to have it by July 1st, and they may cut the first board this month. So it's going very, very well. So I appreciate their opportunity to make that tour. Then I want to report on a meeting I had with the Secretary of Transportation last Monday here. The timing on the Belfair bypass, you know, everybody's project wants to move up, but the Secretary said they'd like to, they want the legislature to set some criteria, and we'll work with them on any possibilities to do things sooner. The Phase 2 widening of Highway 3 that has been basically shortened and delayed, I still remind him that we are owed that. It was in the budget in 2005. We want to get it finished, so I mentioned the case that the left-hand turn lane does not help the school at all. It needs to be done. He's a good listener. Simmons Road was something they were very interested in. He and Travis, his assistant, went out there after the meeting to take a look at it. He suggested if we're looking for additional money that we go to the Freight Mobility Strategic Investment Board. I talked to them, and the freight volume would just not be big enough there to qualify. And with conversations with their executive director, I think CURB, Community Economic Revitalization Board, is absolutely the route to go. They've got quick turnaround. In 60 days, we know if we get the money. So I won't be here, commissioners, but if you can make that a priority, I think it will move the project on. And as you can tell from the public notices, there may be some substantial development up there by one of our larger companies. So it looks like it's gonna happen. I brought up the issue of a barricade on the Shelton bypass to separate those lanes of traffic. There has been a history, and staff is researching in the Transportation Committee for me in the Senate what the history of the accidents are on that stretch of the Shelton bypass. And if we could divide that, I think most of those accidents are head-on collisions. So I know there's been fatalities, but with the increased traffic, it's a very dangerous road, I believe. And then they're going to look also at Miller Creek, which is just north of Rest a While. Holiday Beach is the area that has a lot of flooding and issues there. So take a look at that. And just one last question. I had to leave a little early yesterday, and I think that Jerry Hoff made a presentation about any possibility for processing sewage at the Belfair wastewater plant. What was the result of that?
The cost was to be able to do that between retrofitting the current plant, which admittedly it was strongly estimated, the costs would not make the price that we would need to charge competitive with Lot, which is the Lacey, Olympia, and
Central Kitsap.
Central Kitsap, and a third one.
Well, Shelton.
The city of Shelton. We couldn't come in at a price that, in fact, it was even higher, obviously higher than Webb Hill.
Yeah, well, it was twice as much without it figuring in, he did a presentation last night in Belfair. It was twice as much, 40 some odd cents, 49 cents.
Okay, so you did hear that.
Yeah, without figuring in wages.
Okay, so.
Did you also say that there was not enough room to build anything like that at Belfair last night?
You know, they would have to be built separately. It wouldn't be able to just be built within the building itself. It'd have to be built separately, and there was still an access issue.
Okay, well, I did talk to some people about the landowner about the access issue, and that's not an issue with them.
Okay.
Access is not an issue with
But yeah, it would have been looking at twice as much and
Okay,
didn't believe
well, I mean,
anybody
it's
would
been
have
looked
trouble.
at, but I
Yes.
appreciate that. Okay, and then, last item, some people are still confused, are notices going out for that meeting, I think it's the 13th?
I did want to mention that,
To
yeah.
the land, to the parcel owners.
He said last night at the Belfair meeting that they were finalized on Friday. They should have gone out in the mail probably yesterday or today, but he didn't know, the exact.
Okay, they're going out, they're gonna be notified.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, and just to make sure the public knows, I'm assuming you will be at the Belfair Sewer public meeting on December 13th, 5:30 at the library, and I will be there, and
I'm not gonna be able, I have to be out of town.
okay,
I
so there
can't.
will be a quorum there. Is there anything else come before this commission?
Move we adjourn.
Second?
We are adjourned. Thank you.